Welcome back, CEO. You're listening to the CEO Shift Show, the space for service-based leaders who are done running their business like a demanding job and ready to operate it like the scalable asset it is always meant to be. This is where your identity gets rebuilt, where structure starts to replace the strain, and where leadership stops being reactive and starts to be intentional. Because you're not building a business to be consumed by it, you're building a business that supports your life, your leadership, and your future. This episode matters, not because it's the end of the year, but because this is the moment where most CEOs finally tell the truth to themselves. Not the polished truth, not the public-facing truth, but the quiet, internal truths. This year has taught you way more than maybe what you realize. It's taught you about your capacity and your boundaries and what actually works and what absolutely doesn't work anymore. So today we're closing this year in a way that actually sets up the CEO you're becoming. You're not the operator you've already outgrown. Before we go any further, one thing. If this message resonates, hit like, share it with the CEO who needs it, and subscribe. But because movements only grow when leaders actually pass the message forward. And as you continue to listen, I want you to know this. There are different paths forward. Some of you will start quietly using the free growth engine tools. Some of you will step into structure through our tool vault. And some of you will know in your body that it's time for leadership level support and coaching. So now let's talk about this year. This year, I know, has asked a lot of you. Not in the really obvious and overly dramatic ways, but in the subtle, relentless ways. It stretched your capacity in ways that you didn't actually plan for. And I'm sure it tested your patience with problem you thought that you already solved. It also exposed gaps you could no longer ignore, even if you wanted to. There was a moment, maybe quiet, inconvenient, or maybe deeply uncomfortable, when something became very clear. The numbers were moving, but the pressure, it wasn't easing. Your decisions took more energy than they used to. And no matter how capable you are, the mental load felt constant. And somewhere in all of that awareness, the truth landed. The old way can't follow me forward. And this isn't because you failed or because you're doing it wrong or because the business has outgrown the way you've been carrying it. That moment wasn't weakness. When you had that moment, it was evolution. And evolution can be really uncomfortable because it asks you to release who you've been before you fully know who you're becoming. Where did this year show you unmistakably that the way you've been operating just isn't sustainable in order for you to achieve the next level? That awareness is the foundation of real leadership. Everything changes when you decide you're done dragging forward. We're not talking about goals or ambitions. What we're talking about here is patterns. And one of the biggest realizations I've seen across client work this year is hustling kept businesses alive, but it doesn't actually grow them anymore. And you might know this to be true. Hustle was a season in your business. It wasn't a strategy. And at a certain point, effort stops being impressive and starts being really expensive. Leadership begins when the effort is no longer the plan, and the structure now actually has to take its place. So your systems actually started to replace your adrenaline, and your ownership replaced over involvement, and planning starts to replace pressure. Another truth surfacing again and again. A business can't pay you back if it still depends on you to function. And when the owner is the bottleneck, revenue actually stays fragile, no matter how strong the top line looks. It's one of the reasons why growth can feel stressful instead of rewarding. That's why big months still feel tight, and why you can't fully step away without everything actually slowing down. So the shift happens when the business starts standing on its own. Not because you disappeared, but because you built it to hold without you. And clarity plays an absolutely massive role here. The CEO who felt the least overwhelmed weren't the ones with fewer challenges. They were the ones who knew the plan. They knew what mattered, what didn't matter, who owned what, and what wasn't theirs anymore. And the day-to-day noise that happens in a business started to drop away, and their personal energy returned. And delegation, real delegation, was game-changing. Again, not task dumping, not micromanaging from a distance. Giving your team actual ownership. When leaders stop holding everything in just in case, control, it didn't disappear. It actually increased. Visibility improved, teams step up, leadership capacity expands. And one final truth became absolutely unavoidable this year. And that is that overwhelm isn't a personality trait. It shows that there's an absolute lack of strategy. And here's the good news. Strategy is learnable. It's installable. And most importantly, it's repeatable. These aren't lessons to memorize. They're patterns that we need to consider. The CEO you're becoming doesn't lead from urgency. They don't confuse effort with value, and they don't build their worth on exhaustion. They actually think before reacting. They protect their energy, and they design weeks that work for them and for their teams. I'd like to think that in 2026, you're not going to carry chaos forward anymore. You're not going to continue to carry the entire business alone. And you're ready to stop operating in that constant response mode. I'm hoping that you're going to see your calendar with space, see your team owning their outcomes, and seeing systems actually doing the heavy lifting. And most importantly, see yourself leading instead of chasing. It isn't wishful thinking. That's what happens when a business is treated like an asset. So what you're about to do isn't a new framework. It's the final step of the 2025 CEO Audit. This is where reflection can now become closure. And when we have closure, that actually creates capacity. Release what you're done carrying. And the pressure to always be available, the expectations that no longer fit how you want to show up, and the belief that rest has to be earned. So reclaim what you let slip this year. Time, boundaries, decision space. And let's work towards reinforcing the structure a business actually needs. That would be clear systems, defined ownership, financial visibility. This is the time of the year to recommit, but not to doing more, but actually leading differently. The story you carry into 2026 matters. So let it be one of intention instead of survival, structure instead of strain, and leadership instead of overwork. Before we close, I want to be very clear about what support looks like from here. Not talking about pressure. I just want to make sure that you know what some options are based on where you are right now. If what you need is space to think and clarity to process what this year has revealed, and the tools you can work through at your own pace, start with the free CEO tools inside our growth engine. That's where you ground yourself. That's where the spinning actually stops. If what you need is structure, real structure, systems, rhythms, decision frameworks that move you out of operator mode and into CEO mode, the tool vault is the next step. That's where things get organized and where overwhelm turns into order. And if what you need is actually leadership level support, someone walking with you as you rebuild how your business actually operates, then coaching is the right move. That's where strategy now becomes execution. And that's where the business stops depending on you and starts working for you. And if you want the systems built for you, not just guided through, we can talk about that on the call too. You don't need to decide today. You don't need to rush. Just know that the path is here when you're ready. And before we end, I want to speak to you as a person, not just as a CEO. I recognize that you've carried more this year than most people will ever see. And congratulations, you're still here. Clear, more discerning, more prepared than maybe you even realize. Merry Christmas, CEO. We rise again in January. I'll see you soon.